I pulled my beat-up Honda Civic into the driveway of my childhood home in suburban Denver, watching Derek's new BMW gleaming in the November sun. "Still driving that rust bucket, Marion," he called out, his voice dripping with mock concern. "Can't even afford a real car." The extended family members gathering on the porch erupted in laughter. My mother Grace emerged from the front door, her perfectly styled hair catching the light as she suggested, "Maybe you should ask your cousin Bradley for a job at his firm, sweetheart." My phone vibrated against my leg, displaying a message that made my lips curve slightly. "ETA 5 minutes, Ms. Johnson." Everything was about to change. The warmth of my childhood home felt suffocating as I stepped inside, immediately sensing something orchestrated in the way everyone had arranged themselves in the living room. 23 family members sat in a perfect semicircle, their faces wearing identical expressions of false concern, mixed with barely concealed smugness. "Marion, sweetie, please sit down." Grace guided me to a single chair positioned at the center like a defendant at trial. My stomach tightened as I recognized the setup, but I complied, curious to see how far they would take this performance. Lauren, my younger sister, stood up with her laptop, connecting it to the 65-inch television Thomas had installed last Christmas. "We need to talk about your life choices." She began clicking to reveal a PowerPoint presentation titled, "Saving Marion an Intervention." The first slide displayed a photo of me from 3 years ago in my corner office at Henderson Corp, wearing a designer suit. The next showed me last month at the grocery store in jeans and a faded sweater. "This is what we're dealing with," Lauren announced, as if presenting evidence of a crime. My Uncle Robert cleared his throat, pulling out his phone. "I want to show you something, Marion." He turned the screen toward me, revealing a WhatsApp group chat named Saving Marion, with 47 messages from the past week. "We've all been worried, discussing how to help you get back on track." Each family member had contributed their observations. Aunt Patricia's message read, "Saw her buying generic cereal brands. Heartbreaking." Cousin Bradley had written, "Offered her networking opportunities 3 times. She keeps declining. Classic self-sabotage." Derek leaned forward in his leather jacket, the price tag accidentally still attached to the sleeve. "Look, sis, we get it. Some people peak early. You had your moment at that corporate job, but not everyone can maintain success." He gestured around the room. "That's why we're here. Family supports family." Patricia stood next, producing a manila folder thick with papers. "I've taken the liberty of printing job listings," she announced, fanning out pages across the coffee table. Each position was highlighted in yellow: entry-level administrative assistant, retail associate, call center representative. "These all offer health insurance after 90 days. The humiliation burned through my chest, but I kept my expression neutral, watching each person reveal their true nature. My father Thomas sat silently in his recliner, his eyes fixed on a point just past my shoulder. His disappointment radiated across the room without him saying a word. "I've spoken to HR at my company," Bradley interjected, smoothing his tie with manicured fingers. "There's a receptionist position opening next month, $35,000 a year, which should be enough for a modest lifestyle. You'd be working under me, but I promise to keep things professional." Grace clasped her hands together as if in prayer. "We've also discussed your living situation. That studio apartment in downtown Denver, paying rent when you could move back home. Your old room is exactly as you left it. Well, I did convert part of it to my craft space, but we can make it work." Lauren clicked to another slide showing my LinkedIn profile with 0 recent updates. "You haven't posted about professional development in 3 years. In today's economy, that's career suicide." She turned to face me directly. "When was the last time you attended a networking event, went to a conference, updated your certifications?" "Remember when she was regional sales director?" Derek added, shaking his head. "6-figure salary, company car, expense account. Now look at her, still wearing clothes from college." He pointed at my sweater, a comfortable gray cardigan I'd owned for years. My phone buzzed again. "Approaching Denver airspace, Ms. Johnson. Legal team confirming all documents prepared." I slipped it back into my pocket without checking the screen, maintaining eye contact with each family member as they dissected my life. Robert stood up, assuming what he considered an authoritative pose. "Marion, we've created a life improvement plan. 6 months of family support, including financial literacy classes that Patricia will teach, career coaching from Bradley, and social media training from Lauren. Derek has offered to help you trade in that embarrassment of a car for something more respectable." Something that won't break down on the highway, Derek added with a laugh that encouraged others to join in. Patricia pulled out another folder. I've also researched government assistance programs you might qualify for. Food stamps, heating assistance, maybe even some job training grants. There's no shame in needing help. The irony of her words nearly broke my composure. Patricia, who had been borrowing money from Grandma Eleanor for years with no intention of repayment, lecturing me about government assistance. I filed away every comment, every revealing moment of their characters. "We've scheduled this intervention because we love you," Grace said, though her eyes remained cold. "Watching you struggle, pretending everything is fine when we can all see you're drowning, it breaks a mother's heart." Lauren advanced to her final slides, each one documenting my decline through social media analysis. Fewer restaurant check-ins, no vacation photos wearing the same outfits in multiple pictures. "The data doesn't lie," she concluded. "You're in a downward spiral, and without intervention, who knows where you'll end up." Bradley stood for his closing argument. "Marion, you were always the smart one. Top of your class scholarship to University of Colorado, fast-track promotion at Henderson Corp. But somewhere along the way you lost it. Maybe it was the broken engagement, maybe burnout, maybe just bad choices. The reason doesn't matter now. What matters is accepting help." They all stared at me expectantly, waiting for tears, gratitude, or argument. Instead, I noticed details they'd missed in their performance. Bradley's Rolex was fake, the weight and movement wrong. Derek's BMW keys had a rental company tag he'd tried to hide. Patricia's designer handbag showed telltale signs of a knockoff. "Thank you all for your concern," I said, finally, my voice steady. "This must have taken considerable planning." "We used a shared Google Doc," Lauren said, proudly missing my tone entirely. "Everyone contributed their observations and suggestions. Even second cousins sent input." My phone displayed another message. 3 minutes out, Charlotte confirms she's in position. I stood slowly looking at each face around the room. They'd shown me exactly who they were, confirmed every suspicion I'd harbored for years. The real test was about to begin. "Before we continue," Grace said quickly, "we have one more surprise to really drive home what you're missing in life. Someone who represents the success and stability you could have had." The doorbell rang with perfect timing, and my stomach dropped as I realized their ambush had another layer. Grace practically skipped to the door, her smile widening as she prepared to deliver what she clearly considered the killing blow to my dignity. Grace swung open the front door with theatrical flair, stepping aside to reveal the last person I expected to see at this orchestrated humiliation. Ryan walked in, his hand protectively placed on the lower back of a very pregnant woman whose diamond ring caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. "Everyone, you remember Ryan," Grace announced triumphantly, "and this is his lovely wife, Stephanie." The room erupted in warm greetings, as if they'd all been waiting for this moment. Ryan's sandy hair was styled differently now, slicked back in a way that aged him 5 years, but probably impressed his corporate clients. Stephanie glided in wearing a cream-colored maternity dress that whispered expensive with every movement of its fabric. "Marion?" Ryan said, his voice carrying that condescending gentleness people use with elderly relatives. "It's good to see you again." I remained standing, watching as they chose seats strategically across from me, positioning themselves as the picture of success against my supposed failure. Stephanie's hand rested on her belly in that unconscious way expectant mothers do her French manicure, perfectly maintained. 8 months along. Grace supplied helpfully, beaming at them as if they were her own children. Ryan was just promoted to senior partner at Mitchell & Associates, youngest in the firm's history. The room filled with congratulations while my mind traveled back 3 years to the night everything changed. But they didn't know about the 18 months that followed my disappearance from their radar, the real reason I'd walked away from everything they thought mattered. "Marion and Ryan were engaged once," Patricia stage whispered to Stephanie, as if I wasn't standing right there. "Before her, difficulties began." Stephanie's eyes swept over me with practiced assessment, taking in my thrift store sweater and comfortable jeans. Her lips pursed slightly before forming a sympathetic smile. "Ryan's told me so much about you. It must be hard seeing how different things could have been." "Actually," Ryan interjected, pulling out his phone, "I wanted to mention something. We have several positions opening at the firm, entry-level but solid opportunities. I could put in a word, help you get back on your feet." Derek laughed from his corner. "From almost marrying a senior partner to maybe being his secretary, life comes at you fast. It's accounts receivable, actually, Ryan corrected, missing or ignoring the cruelty in Derek's comment. $40,000 to start good benefits. You'd be working in our downtown office, though, not on the executive floor, naturally. Stephanie leaned forward, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a kind tone. I know some wonderful discount stores where you can build a professional wardrobe on a budget. I shop there for our housekeeper sometimes. The quality is surprisingly good for the price point. She reached out and actually touched the sleeve of my sweater, running her fingers along the fabric. This is from Goodwill, isn't it? I recognize the pills in the weave. Don't worry, with the right styling tips, no one has to know where you shop. Speaking of shopping, Lauren chimed in. Stephanie has the most amazing Instagram. She does these hauls from Nordstrom and Saks. Maybe following her would give you some inspiration for when you can afford nice things again. The conversation flowed around me as they discussed my life as if I were a rehabilitation project. Grace produced photo albums showing Ryan and Stephanie pictures from when I was successful, each image accompanied by sighs and headshakes about my fall from grace. This was at the Henderson Corps Gala. Grace pointed to a photo of me in an evening gown. She was being groomed for vice president. Can you believe she just walked away from all that? Mental health is so important, Stephanie said with fake concern. After what Ryan told me about your breakdown, it's brave that you're even trying to rebuild. Some people never recover from that kind of collapse. My phone showed another message from my assistant. Legal team confirms all recordings uploaded to secure cloud. Charlotte has eyes on the street. I kept my face neutral, letting them spin their narrative. The broken engagement hit her hard, Robert explained to Stephanie as if sharing medical history. She disappeared for months. When she resurfaced, well, he gestured at me vaguely. I was worried she might do something drastic, Ryan added, his brow furrowed in manufactured concern. That's partly why I stayed in touch with your mother, Marion, to make sure you were at least alive. Thomas shifted in his recliner, the leather creaking under his weight. For a moment his eyes met mine and I saw something flicker there. Discomfort, shame. But he remained silent, complicit in this circus. We should tell her about the baby's name, Stephanie suggested brightly. If it's a girl, we're naming her Eleanor after Ryan's grandmother. She was such an inspiration, building her own business empire from nothing. The irony of her words hit me like a physical blow. They were naming their child after Grandma Eleanor while sitting in her house, participating in the mockery of her actual granddaughter who'd spent the last 18 months of Eleanor's life by her side. Bradley checked his watch ostentatiously. I hate to rush things, but the intervention should stay on schedule. We still have the financial planning portion to cover. Of course, Ryan agreed, standing up to shake Bradley's hand. I just wanted Marion to know she has options. Sometimes seeing people who've made better choices can be motivating. The firm's holiday party is next month, Stephanie added. Partners and their spouses only naturally, but maybe Ryan could get you a catering position. The company that handles it is always looking for servers. Patricia clapped her hands together. What a wonderful idea. Service industry work is honest, and tips can really supplement income. My fingers traced the edge of my phone as another update arrived. Helicopter fueled and ready, ETA 90 seconds. The room continued their dissection of my failures, comparing them to Ryan's success, but my mind was elsewhere. 3 years ago, I hadn't just left a corporate job and a fiancé. I'd discovered something that changed everything. Something that led me to those long nights in hospital rooms, to conversations with lawyers in Singapore, to decisions that would soon shatter every assumption in this room. Remember when you two would plan your future? Grace asked Ryan wistfully. The house in Cherry Hills, the vacations to Europe, the charity galas. Stephanie and I just closed on a place there, actually, Ryan supplied. 6 bedrooms, pool, tennis court. The American dream realized. Derek snorted. Meanwhile, Marion's living the American nightmare in that studio apartment. How the mighty have fallen. We all make choices, I said quietly, my first words since Ryan's arrival. The room fell silent for a moment before Stephanie filled it with nervous laughter. Exactly. And it's never too late to make better ones. Ryan's offer stands Marion. Think about it. Lauren pulled up something on her laptop. Actually, I found Marion's old wedding Pinterest board. Look at all these dreams she had. The Vera Wang dress, the Aspen venue, the $100,000 budget. Now look at her. They passed around Lauren's laptop, each person making sympathetic noises at my former aspirations. What they didn't know was that I'd deleted that board myself along with every other remnant of the person they thought I should be. It must be hard, Stephanie continued, seeing everyone move forward while you're stuck. But that's why family interventions work. Admitting you need help is the first step. Grace nodded enthusiastically. Ryan and Stephanie have offered to mentor you, Marion. Maybe having successful people in your life will inspire better choices. We could do monthly check-ins, Ryan suggested. Review your progress help with goal setting. Consider it life coaching from people who've actually achieved something. The condescension dripped from every word, but I focused on the sound growing louder outside, the rhythmic beating that would soon interrupt their carefully planned degradation. My phone lit up one final time, beginning descent. Before we move on, Grace said, standing with purpose, there's something else we need to discuss. Something about family legacy and your future Marion, or what's left of it. She looked meaningfully at Robert, who produced a leather folder from beside his chair. The real reason for this gathering was about to surface, and I could see the greed barely concealed behind their concerned facades. Robert stood with the authority of a man about to deliver a closing argument. The leather folder in his hands containing documents I could see were marked with legal seals. The entire room shifted their attention from Ryan and Stephanie to this new act in their carefully orchestrated performance. Marion, we need to discuss Grandma Eleanor's estate. Robert began, his voice taking on what he probably thought was a professional tone. As you know, she passed 6 months ago, and there are matters that require immediate attention. I watched him lay out papers across the coffee table, each one positioned deliberately for maximum impact. Property deeds, tax assessments, financial statements, all bearing Eleanor's name and various dates from the past 2 years. The family ranch in Aspen alone has property taxes exceeding $50,000 annually. Patricia jumped in her calculator, already out. Then there's the maintenance, the staff salaries, the insurance. It's hemorrhaging money. Bradley leaned forward, his fake concern almost convincing. Given your current financial situation, Marion holding on to your portion would be catastrophic. You'd be underwater within months, probably forced into bankruptcy. Which is why, Robert continued smoothly, we've prepared a solution that protects everyone's interests, especially yours. He produced a stack of documents with colorful tabs marking signature lines. The top page read, Transfer of Interest and Power of Attorney, in bold letters. I noticed the date had been filled in already, assumptively marked for today. By signing your portion over to Bradley's investment management firm, Grace explained, her tone suggesting she was doing me a favor, you'll receive a modest monthly stipend and be free from all financial obligations. It's really the best option for someone in your position. Derek couldn't contain his eagerness, practically bouncing in his seat. I've already identified which parcels would be perfect for development. The eastern section could support at least 40 luxury condos. The revenue potential is massive. The lawyers have reviewed everything, Robert assured, though I noticed he avoided direct eye contact. It's all perfectly legal and in your best interest. I picked up one of the documents noting the backdated notarization and what appeared to be witness signatures from people I'd never met. This is dated 3 weeks ago, I observed mildly. A clerical error, Robert said quickly. Easy to fix. The important thing is moving forward. Lauren had pulled up a presentation on her laptop showing architectural renderings of modern buildings where Grandma Eleanor's beloved ranch currently stood. Look at this vision, Marion. Instead of an old ranch that's falling apart, we could have a thriving community generating income for the family. For those equipped to handle it, Stephanie added unhelpfully, her hand still resting on her pregnant belly. I studied the documents more carefully, finding clause after clause that would strip me not just of property rights, but of any say in Eleanor's legacy. Hidden in the legal language were provisions that would retroactively validate any actions taken by other family members regarding the estate. When did you all decide this? I asked quietly. Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but remained silent. Grace answered for the group. We've been discussing it since the funeral. You were so absent during that time. Decisions had to be made. Absent, I repeated, remembering the 18 months I'd spent sleeping in hospital chairs managing Eleanor's care, holding her hand through chemotherapy treatments, while they made excuses about busy schedules. You disappeared for most of her illness, Derek accused. We had to step up and handle things. My phone buzzed with a message. 60 seconds, all recording devices active. I set the document back on the table carefully. I remember things differently, I said. I remember begging you all to visit her. I remember sending photos from the hospital that went unviewed. I remember birthday cards she asked me to buy because none of you could be bothered. That's not fair, Patricia protested. "We all have lives responsibilities. Not everyone can just abandon their career to play nurse." Bradley pulled out his phone showing bank statements. "The point is, Marion, you're not equipped for this level of financial responsibility. Last month alone, the estate accounts showed outflows exceeding $200,000. Can you even comprehend that amount? Besides," Robert added, flipping to another section, "there are irregularities we've discovered. Transfers to foreign accounts, unusual transactions in Singapore. If you sign now, we won't need to investigate further." The threat hung in the air, poorly veiled, but effective for anyone who didn't know the truth. I thought of Eleanor's last words to me in that sterile hospital room, her frail hand gripping mine with surprising strength. "They don't know about Singapore, dear. I made sure of that. Use it wisely." "The Singapore accounts," I said slowly, watching their faces. "Tell me more about these irregularities." Grace and Robert exchanged glances. "Significant sums," Robert said carefully. "Transferred without family knowledge or consent. It could be construed as elder abuse taking advantage of a sick woman." "We wouldn't want that kind of scandal," Grace added quickly. "Signing protects everyone, including you." Ryan cleared his throat. "From a legal perspective, Marion, they're offering you an out. Take it before questions get asked that nobody wants answered." The drumbeat of helicopter blades grew audible in the distance, though the family seemed too focused on their pressure tactics to notice. Lauren pulled up another document on her screen. "I've drafted a press release for after you sign," she announced proudly. "It positions this as a family coming together to honor Eleanor's memory through responsible development. Your cooperation will be noted positively." "And if I don't sign?" I asked. The room fell silent for a moment before Derek laughed harshly. "Then you'll lose everything anyway. Legal battles you can't afford, property taxes you can't pay, and a family that tried to save you from yourself. Your choice." Patricia produced a gold-plated pen, Eleanor's own, I realized with a start. She'd taken it from Eleanor's desk, the one our grandmother used to sign birthday cards and letters to distant friends. "Use Eleanor's pen," Patricia suggested. "Make it symbolic. She would want you to be smart about this." My fingers traced the pen without taking it, remembering how Eleanor taught me to write thank you notes with this very instrument when I was 7. The helicopter sound grew louder, and I saw Robert glance toward the window with the first hint of uncertainty. "There's something else," I said, standing slowly. "Something about those last months with Eleanor that you should know." "We don't have time for stories," Bradley interrupted. "Sign the papers, Marion. Let us help you." I walked to the window, seeing neighbors starting to gather on their lawns, drawn by the approaching aircraft noise. "Eleanor told me something before she died, about promises and family and who shows up when it matters." "Dramatic last words won't change financial reality," Robert insisted, but his voice carried less certainty now. Grace stood too, moving toward me with the documents. "Sweetheart, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You've already lost so much." The irony of her words settled over me as I turned to face them all. They thought I'd lost everything, but they were about to discover how much I'd actually gained. The helicopter was close enough now that the windows began to vibrate slightly. "I need to tell you all something about those Singapore accounts," I began, but the sound of the approaching helicopter finally broke through their focus. Derek was the first to the window, his face paling as he saw what was approaching. "What the hell is that?" The doorbell rang just as Derek pressed his face against the window, and Grace's expression transformed into one of pure satisfaction. She clapped her hands together, moving away from the helicopter commotion with practiced efficiency. "Perfect timing," she announced. "Everyone our guests are arriving for the celebration." My stomach twisted as I realized the depths of their planning. This wasn't just a family intervention. They'd orchestrated a public spectacle. Through the window, I could see neighbors streaming across their yards, dressed in their Sunday best. Patricia rushed to help Grace with the door, while Robert hastily adjusted the signing table he'd set up in the front room, complete with a small Marion's Fresh Start banner that Lauren must have printed. The helicopter noise grew louder, but the family seemed determined to proceed with their schedule. Mrs. Henderson from next door entered first, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing the same expression of pity she'd used when my childhood dog died. "Grace told me about your brave decision today," she said, patting my arm. "Accepting help is so difficult for proud people." Behind her came the Johnsons, the Smiths, and at least 15 other neighborhood families I'd known since childhood. Each one looked at me with that particular combination of sympathy and superiority that suburban gossip produces. "We're here to support Marion," Grace announced to the growing crowd, her voice carrying the false sweetness of artificial honey. "She's making the mature decision to let family help manage her affairs." Pastor Williams arrived next, his black suit immaculate despite the November chill. He approached me with outstretched hands, grasping both of mine in his. "Grace asked me to provide spiritual guidance for this moment of surrender," he intoned. "Proverbs tells us that pride goes before a fall." "And Marion has fallen so far," Patricia added, helpfully guiding more neighbors inside. Lauren had positioned herself strategically with her phone, adjusting the ring light she'd attached. "I'm going live on Instagram," she announced to the room. "This is such an important moment. Mental health awareness, family support, overcoming failure. It's all so relevant." She held up her phone, framing me in the shot. "Hey everyone, I'm here with my sister Marion, who's having a major breakthrough. After 3 years of struggling, she's finally accepting that she needs help. It's so brave." The comments started flowing, immediately visible on her laptop screen that mirrored her phone. "So inspiring. Your family is amazing. She's lucky to have you," mixed with less kind observations about my appearance and apparent circumstances. Bradley had arranged chairs in what looked suspiciously like an audience formation, all facing the signing table where the documents lay waiting. He stood beside them like a game show host, straightening papers that didn't need straightening. "We thought witnesses from the community would make this moment more meaningful," Grace explained to the crowd. "Marion's journey from executive to where she is now contains lessons for all of us." More neighbors arrived, including Dr. Peterson, who'd retired from his psychiatry practice, but apparently couldn't resist this event. He studied me with clinical interest, probably already diagnosing whatever disorder he thought explained my decline. "The helicopter," someone near the window said uncertainly, but Grace's voice rose above the concern. "That's just construction noise from the new development," she said dismissively. "Now, Marion, why don't you take your seat so we can begin?" The signing table had been decorated with flowers, Eleanor's photos, and what appeared to be a vision board Lauren had created showing a better future, complete with stock photos of smiling office workers and modest apartments. Ryan guided Stephanie to a chair in the front row, their presence adding legitimacy to the spectacle. She pulled out her phone too, probably updating her perfectly curated social media with this unexpected entertainment. "Marion's story is one of riches to rags," Robert began, addressing the crowd as if delivering a keynote. "But today, we're offering her a ladder back to respectability." Mrs. Chen from 2 doors down whispered loudly to her husband, "I knew something was wrong when she stopped hosting those dinner parties. Depression is so tragic." The helicopter sound was impossible to ignore, now the windows actually rattling in their frames. But Grace raised her voice higher, determined to maintain control of her production. "Pastor Williams will now offer a prayer for Marion's journey," she announced. The pastor stepped forward, raising his hands as the crowd bowed their heads. "Lord, we ask that you help Marion release her pride and accept the wisdom of those who love her. Help her understand that failure isn't final when family stands ready to catch you." "Amen," the crowd murmured while I kept my eyes open watching the performance. Lauren's live stream viewer count had climbed to over 3,000. Comments poured in faster than anyone could read them, a mix of support, mockery, and armchair psychology about my apparent breakdown. "Before Marion signs," Grace said, producing a speech from her pocket, "I'd like to say a few words about the daughter I raised versus the woman standing here today." She unfolded the paper with theatrical precision. "Marion was our golden child. Straight A's, full scholarship, corporate fast track. We were so proud." She paused, dabbing at her eyes. "But somewhere she lost her way. Today we're not just signing papers. We're signing a commitment to rebuild her from the ground up." The neighbors applauded softly, some wiping away tears at Grace's performance. Dr. Peterson nodded approvingly, probably seeing therapeutic value in public accountability. Derek stood up next, clearly wanting his moment. "As her brother, it's been hard watching Marion fail. But that's why we're all here, to show her that hitting bottom isn't the end if you're willing to admit defeat." "Such a supportive family," someone whispered. Patricia waved the golden pen again. "Marion, the whole neighborhood is here to witness your fresh start. Don't let pride keep you from accepting help." The helicopter was definitely directly overhead now, the sound making it hard to hear. Several neighbors had moved to the windows, pointing at something outside. But the core group around the signing table remained focused on their mission. "I think," I said, having to raise my voice over the noise, "everyone should know the truth about those Singapore accounts." "Not now," Robert said sharply. "Sign first, stories later." But I continued standing, despite their attempts to guide me back to the chair. Grandma Eleanor set them up for a specific purpose. She told me about them during one of our late nights at the hospital. "Your grandmother was heavily medicated," Grace said quickly. Not everything she said was real. The living room windows were now vibrating consistently. Someone screamed from outside, "It's landing on the lawn!" Bradley abandoned his post by the documents, rushing to the window with others. His face went white as he turned back to the room. That's a corporate helicopter. It has a logo." "What kind of logo?" Robert demanded, still clutching his legal papers. But I was already walking toward the door, my phone showing the final message. "Landed safely. Ready when you are, Ms. Johnson." I reached for my phone, connecting it to the family's smart TV with the same casual motion I'd use in a boardroom. The massive screen flickered to life as neighbors pressed closer, their celebration of my supposed surrender suddenly forgotten. "Before anyone signs anything," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos of the helicopter's dying rotors, "there are some things you should see." The first video began playing immediately. Crystal clear security footage showed Derek sneaking into Grandma Eleanor's bedroom at 2:43 in the morning, 6 months before her death. The timestamp glowed in the corner as he crept toward her jewelry box, Eleanor sleeping fitfully in her hospital bed behind him. "What is this?" Derek's face drained of color as he watched himself pocket Eleanor's diamond earrings, the ones our grandfather had given her for their 40th anniversary. The footage jumped to another date showing Derek returning multiple times each visit, resulting in missing items. Cash from her bedside drawer, the antique watch she'd promised to Thomas, even medication bottles that he'd apparently sold. "That's fake," Derek stammered, but the sweat beading on his forehead said otherwise. "Marion obviously doctored this." "The security company will verify everything," I said quietly, swiping to the next video. This time, Lauren appeared on screen, using Eleanor's credit card at Nordstrom Saks, then Louis Vuitton, all in a single afternoon. The receipts appeared beside the footage, showing thousands in charges, while Eleanor lay dying in the hospital. "I was buying things for her," Lauren protested weakly, but the next clip showed her unboxing the same items in her apartment, trying them on for her Instagram followers. "Grandma wanted me to have nice things," she added desperately. The room had gone completely silent except for the whisper of wind from the still open door. Neighbors who'd come to witness my humiliation now stared at my family with horror and fascination. Patricia stepped forward aggressively. "You can't just spy on family, Marion. This is probably illegal." "Not when I have power of attorney," I replied, pulling up the next file, which Eleanor gave me 18 months ago when she realized things were disappearing. The screen now showed bank records meticulously annotated in Eleanor's shaky handwriting. Checks made out to Patricia's charity, the Children's Dream Foundation, which further investigation revealed was simply Patricia's personal account with a deceptive name. $47,000 over 2 years. I read from Eleanor's notes. For children who didn't exist, programs that never ran, galas that never happened. Robert tried to snatch the remote from my hand, but I'd already cued the next revelation. Security footage from the family business office showed him accessing the company safe after hours, removing cash that he'd reported as deposits that mysteriously never reached the bank. "The IRS will be very interested in these discrepancies," I noted, watching Robert's confident facade crumble. Mrs. Henderson gasped audibly as each revelation unfolded. Lauren's livestream viewer count had exploded to over 50,000, the comments section a blur of shock and judgment. She seemed frozen, unable to decide whether to end the stream or capitalize on the viral moment. "This is entrapment," Bradley shouted, loosening his tie. "You set us up." "No," I corrected. Eleanor set up cameras after she noticed her pain medication disappearing. "Would you like to see who was stealing from a dying woman's morphine supply?" Grace lunged for the TV power button, but the next video was already playing. This one was different, not security footage, but a recording from Eleanor's tablet showing Grace in her bedroom practicing her grief-stricken daughter's speech 2 days before Eleanor actually passed. "The reading of the will should be quite favorable," Grace said to someone off camera. "I've made sure Marion won't be there. Some story about a business trip should work." Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair, while Stephanie watched with the fascination of someone realizing she'd married into a soap opera. The neighbors had formed a semicircle, their phones out, recording everything. "But wait," I said, my voice staying calm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "There's more. The screen shifted to emails between family members planning this very intervention. The subject line read, Operation Reality Check, and the messages detailed everything from the PowerPoint presentation to inviting Ryan to really twist the knife. Derek's email was particularly cruel. Make sure to mention her Honda. I'll bring the BMW. The contrast will break her. Lauren had written, I'll go live on Instagram. Watching her sign those papers will make amazing content. Already have hashtags planned. But the most damaging message came from Robert. Once she signs, we can discover more estate assets. The Singapore accounts are just the beginning. Eleanor had properties we haven't even disclosed yet. You knew, I said, turning to face them all. You knew about everything Eleanor had, and you were planning to steal it all. The room erupted in chaos. Derek tried to grab my phone while Robert shouted about context and misunderstandings. Patricia wept theatrical tears about being misunderstood, while Lauren finally killed her live stream, but not before the damage was done. There's one more thing, I said loud enough to cut through their panic. The final video appeared, this one showing Ryan and Eleanor's study 3 years ago, photographing documents from her private files. The timestamp matched the week before our engagement ended, before I supposedly had my breakdown. You were investigating her assets, I said, looking directly at Ryan. Planning to marry into money. When you realized I'd inherit everything, suddenly you were interested in wedding planning. Stephanie's hand had frozen over her belly, staring at her husband with dawning horror. Is that why you insisted on a prenup that favored you? The helicopter blades outside had stopped completely, leaving only the sound of shocked breathing and whispered comments from the assembled neighbors. My phone buzzed with a message. Ready for your entrance, Ms. Johnson. The team is in position. Pastor Williams cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps we should pause this intervention for prayer and reflection. We're past prayers, I said, disconnecting my phone from the TV. The authorities will sort out the legal implications, but first I have an appointment to keep. I walked toward the door, passing between neighbors who parted like water. Behind me, my family scrambled to explain, to justify, to minimize what everyone had just witnessed. But their words fell on deaf ears as the crowd followed me outside, drawn by the corporate helicopter gleaming on the lawn. Marion, wait! Thomas called out the first words he'd spoken all day. There's something you need to know. I paused at the threshold, looking back at my father's weathered face. Of everyone in the room, he alone seemed unsurprised by the revelations, his expression carrying the weight of long-held knowledge. The helicopter dominated the front lawn like something from another world, its navy blue paint job pristine against the suburban backdrop. The logo on its side caught the afternoon sun, 3 letters that made Bradley stumble backward in recognition, MJI. My ride's here, I said, simply stepping onto the porch. Behind me, I heard Grace's body hit the floor with a soft thump, Thomas catching her just before her head struck the hardwood. The neighbors surged forward, phones raised, recording every second, as I walked down the familiar stepping stones of my childhood home toward the waiting aircraft. The pilot door opened, and James stepped out in a charcoal Armani suit that probably cost more than most of the cars lining the street. His tall frame moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd grown accustomed to managing millions in daily transactions. He approached me with a slight bow, his voice carrying clearly across the stunned crowd. Ms. Johnson, CEO, he said formally, loud enough for everyone to hear. The board meeting has been rescheduled per your request. The Tokyo team is standing by for the conference call, and the acquisition papers for the Morrison Group are ready for your signature. The words hit the assembled crowd like physical blows. CEO, board meeting, acquisition papers. Lauren dropped her phone, the device clattering on the concrete as she stood frozen. Derek's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his rental BMW keys falling from nerveless fingers. MJ Innovations, Bradley whispered, his fake Rolex trembling on his wrist. That's the company that just partnered with Microsoft, the one that revolutionized eldercare technology. James opened a leather portfolio, revealing documents that needed my attention. The Singapore team also confirms the successful launch of Project Eleanor. First quarter projections exceed $2 billion in revenue. Project Eleanor. Patricia's voice cracked. Marion, what is this? I turned back to face them, my family clustered in the doorway like refugees from their own catastrophe. 3 years ago, I made a choice. While you all schemed and stole, I built something that would have made Eleanor proud. Mrs. Henderson pushed through the crowd, but instead of the pity she'd worn earlier, her face showed something entirely different, pride maybe, or recognition of a secret long kept. The Times wants to reschedule your interview. James continued, his professional demeanor never wavering. "They're particularly interested in your story about building a billion-dollar company while caring for your grandmother." Billion! The word rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Did he say billion? I looked at my Honda Civic parked exactly where I'd left it, next to Derek's rented status symbol. I kept driving that car to see who would judge me for it. Every thrift store outfit, every generic brand purchase, every declined invitation to expensive restaurants, they were all tests. And every one of you failed. Lauren had found her phone and was frantically Googling MJ Innovations. Her face went white as she read, "Founded 3 years ago by mysterious CEO who refuses public appearances, valued at $4.7 billion after latest funding round." "That's impossible." Robert sputtered, his embezzled thousands suddenly pathetic in comparison. "You were broke, living in that studio apartment." "The apartment is my executive crash pad," I corrected. "I own the entire building, converted it to affordable housing for elder care workers. Another thing Eleanor would have loved." Stephanie had backed away from Ryan, her designer maternity dress suddenly seeming like costume jewelry compared to the reality before her. "You knew," she accused him. "You knew who she really was." Ryan's face had gone gray, his senior partner position shrinking to insignificance. "I suspected something during our engagement. The late nights, the mysterious calls. I thought she was cheating." "So you went through Eleanor's files looking for evidence," I finished. "Found her financial records instead. Decided to lock me down before I inherited." The neighbors were recording everything, live streaming to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Within minutes, the story would be everywhere. The family who tried to humiliate their successful daughter only to discover she was wealthier than all of them combined. Grace had recovered enough to stand Thomas supporting her weight. Her perfect hair was mussed, her face pale beneath the carefully applied makeup. "Marion, sweetheart, we didn't know." "Exactly," I said. "You didn't know because you didn't care to know. Too busy calculating what you could take to notice what I was building." James cleared his throat politely. "Ms. Johnson, the senator, is holding on line 1. She wants to discuss the health care initiative you proposed." "Which senator?" someone in the crowd asked. "Warren," James replied casually. "They've been corresponding about elder care reform for 6 months." I walked back toward my family one last time, stopping just outside their reach. "Every night I spent with Eleanor, she told me stories about each of you. How Robert started skimming from the family business at 17. How Patricia's fake charity was inspired by Grace's similar scheme decades ago. How Derek learned to lie before he could properly walk. Each accusation landed like a physical blow, stripping away their pretenses. "But you, Thomas," I said, looking at my father. "She said you were different once, before you let them change you, before you chose silence over integrity." Thomas's weathered face crumpled slightly. "Mary and I—" "The offer to join my board stands," I continued, "but only if you're ready to find your backbone again." I turned back to the helicopter, where James had positioned a small step to help me board. The crowd parted, creating a clear path lined with recording phones and shocked faces. "Wait!" Derek called desperately. "What about the family? What about the estate?" "Eleanor's real will leaves everything to her true daughter of the heart," I said without turning around. "Her words, not mine. Robert can explain the legal implications of trying to forge documents to steal from her actual heir." As I reached the helicopter, Bradley made one last attempt. "Marion, we're family. Surely you can forgive." "I learned forgiveness from Eleanor," I interrupted. "But she also taught me that forgiveness doesn't mean accepting abuse. It means moving forward without the weight of other people's cruelty." I climbed into the helicopter, the leather interior, a stark contrast to the suburban drama playing out below. Through the window I could see my family huddled together, their intervention transformed into their own public reckoning. Lauren was already trying to spin the narrative on her phone, probably crafting posts about her successful sister and their close relationship. The neighbors had formed discussion clusters, the gossip mill already churning at full speed. As the pilot began the startup sequence, I pulled out my phone to check the flood of messages. CEOs, partners, investors, all wondering if the mysterious Marion Johnson had finally decided to go public with her story. But first there was something else to handle. A promise made in a hospital room to a dying woman who'd seen through everyone's facades and chosen to trust the one person who'd loved her without calculation. The helicopter blades began to spin, drowning out whatever words my family was shouting from below. Through the window, I saw Thomas break away from the group, walking toward the aircraft with purpose, despite Grace's attempts to hold him back. He stood just outside the rotor wash, his gray hair whipping in the wind, and for the first time in years, I saw the man Eleanor had once described. The one with principles before compromise became easier than conflict. As we began to rise, I watched my childhood home shrink below the assembled crowd, looking like ants around a disturbed hill. The intervention had become something else entirely, a revelation, a reckoning, a rebirth. But there was still more to come. Eleanor had made sure of that, planning for contingencies I was only beginning to understand. The helicopter banked over Denver as memories flooded back, each one as clear as the city sprawling below. I closed my eyes, letting the past wash over me, while James fielded calls and the pilot navigated toward our downtown destination. 3 years ago, I'd stood in Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital, watching Eleanor sleep fitfully in her bed. The oncologist had just delivered news that shattered our family's carefully maintained illusions: stage 4 pancreatic cancer, maybe 6 months if we were lucky. But when I'd called Derek, he'd said he had a golf tournament. Lauren was at a Fashion Week event. Grace claimed a migraine. So I'd made a decision that changed everything. "I'll be taking leave from Henderson Corp," I'd told my boss the next morning. "Family emergency." He'd warned me about career suicide, about losing my momentum, about how women who stepped off the corporate ladder rarely climbed back on. But Eleanor's frightened eyes haunted me more than any corner office ever could. Those first weeks were the hardest. I'd moved into Eleanor's guest room, learning to navigate medical equipment and medication schedules. During the long nights when pain kept her awake, we'd talk. Really talk, not the surface pleasantries of family gatherings, but deep conversations about life, regret, and dreams deferred. "I started a business once," she'd told me, one 3 a.m. morphine making her tongue loose. "Before I married your grandfather. Had patents and everything." "What happened?" I'd asked, adjusting her pillows. "The 1950s happened. Women didn't run companies then, so I sold the patents, married well, and watched men get rich off my ideas." Her eyes had sharpened despite the drugs. "Don't make my mistakes, Marion." The helicopter touched down on the MJ Innovations building, jerking me back to the present. Through the window, I could see my executive team assembled on the helipad, their faces carefully neutral, despite the chaos they'd undoubtedly witnessed online. "The video from the intervention has gone viral," Sarah, my CFO, said as I stepped out. 20 million views and climbing. Legal wants to know if you want to pursue defamation charges." "Later," I said, moving toward the executive elevator. "First, pull up the Project Eleanor files. All of them." The elevator descended into the building I'd purchased with Eleanor's Singapore funds, every floor representing a dream she'd never been allowed to pursue. The patents she'd mentioned that night, I'd tracked them down, discovered they'd been the foundation for 3 major medical device companies. The ideas she'd sketched on napkins during chemo, they'd become our core products. "Marion," Eleanor had said during what we didn't know would be our last lucid conversation, "I need to tell you about Singapore." She'd built a secret empire slowly, carefully over decades. Every time Robert skimmed from the family business, she'd matched it in hidden investments. Every cruel comment from Grace, every dismissive gesture from her grandchildren had fueled her determination to leave a legacy they couldn't touch. "But I'm leaving it to you," she'd whispered, her hand paper thin in mine. "Because you're the only one who sees me as a person, not a bank account." The memories blurred together, filing patents while she slept, coding prototype software on my laptop beside her bed, conducting investor calls from hospital corridors. The family never visited, so they never saw me transforming their neglect into a billion-dollar business. "The elder care monitoring system," Eleanor had suggested one day, watching nurses struggle with outdated equipment. "What if families could check in remotely? What if we could predict medical events before they happened?" That idea became our flagship product, revolutionizing how families cared for aging relatives. Ironic that the family who'd abandoned Eleanor would live in a world transformed by technology born from their absence. Sarah handed me a tablet showing market reports. The announcement about Project Eleanor has driven stock inquiries through the roof. Everyone wants to know who Marion Johnson is and why she's been hiding. "I wasn't hiding," I corrected, walking toward my office. "I was building. There's a difference." The office walls displayed photos from those 18 months. Eleanor and me at chemo treatments, both wearing matching scarves. Her face lighting up when I showed her our first prototype. The night she'd signed the papers, making me her legal heir with Charlotte Henderson as witness. "Your neighbor, Thomas." My head of security said carefully, "Charlotte Henderson. She's requesting a video call." I smiled the first genuine expression all day. "Put her through." Charlotte's face appeared on the wall screen, her disguise as a simple suburban grandmother, completely abandoned. Behind her stretched the Manhattan skyline from her penthouse office. "Well played, my dear," she said, raising a champagne glass, "though I thought you'd wait until Christmas for the reveal." "They forced my hand," I replied. "The fake intervention, the forged documents. Eleanor wouldn't have wanted me to let them steal anymore." "Eleanor would have loved this," Charlotte laughed. "I can hear her cackling from here. Did you see Grace's face when she fainted?" Charlotte had been Eleanor's best friend since childhood, the only person who knew about the Singapore accounts before me. She'd built Henderson Industries from nothing, pretending retirement while secretly mentoring the next generation of female entrepreneurs. "The acquisition papers for Ryan's firm," James interrupted politely. "Should I proceed with cancellation?" "Not yet," I decided. "Let him sweat through the due diligence. When his fraud comes out, I want him to know I could have stopped it months ago." The screens around my office showed the continuing fallout. Lauren's Instagram had lost thousands of followers as people realized she'd been lying about her struggling sister. Derek's BMW rental company had already called about the overdue payments. Patricia's fake charity was under investigation. "Ms. Johnson," my assistant's voice came through the intercom, "there's someone in the lobby claiming to be your father. Security wants guidance." I looked at the monitors showing Thomas standing alone by the reception desk, his shoulders straighter than I'd seen in years. He'd actually come leaving behind the family chaos to seek redemption. "Send him up," I said. But slowly. Let him see what his daughter built while he stayed silent. As the elevator brought Thomas up through 40 floors of innovation, I thought about Eleanor's last coherent words to me, not about money or revenge or even justice. She'd grabbed my hand with surprising strength and whispered, "Show them what we could have been together." The empire I'd built wasn't just about technology or wealth. It was about proving that love and loyalty create more value than greed and manipulation ever could. Every patent filed, every life improved by our products, every employee who found purpose in our mission, they were all testaments to the woman who'd been dismissed as just another rich grandmother. Thomas would arrive soon, hopefully ready to choose integrity over complicity. The family would rage and scheme and possibly sue. The media would dig into every detail of our story. But none of that mattered as much as the notification on my phone. Project Eleanor Phase 2 approved. Estimated impact 10 million elderly patients in year 1. Eleanor had dreamed of changing how society cared for its vulnerable. I'd made it reality, while her family counted stolen jewelry. The greatest revenge wasn't humiliation or legal action. It was success, born from love rather than greed. My phone buzzed with an encrypted message from our head of mergers and acquisitions. The due diligence team had been working on Ryan's firm for months, uncovering layers of deception that would have impressed even my family. I pulled up the acquisition documents on the main screen, each page revealing another thread in his web of lies. "Mitchell & Associates Purchase Agreement," the header read, followed by a proposed $50 million valuation that we both knew was fantasy. The real numbers buried in forensic accounting reports told a different story, a company drowning in debt propped up by fraudulent client accounts and phantom billables. James knocked and entered, carrying a leather folder. "Ms. Johnson, Ryan Mitchell is in the building. He says it's urgent." "Of course it is," I murmured, remembering how he'd sat in my childhood home just hours ago, proud of his pregnant wife and corner office. "Show him to conference room C, the one with glass walls." I wanted witnesses for whatever desperate play he was about to attempt. The intervention had been public humiliation. This would be a private reckoning. The acquisition documents painted a clear picture. Ryan had been kiting checks between client accounts for 2 years, using new investments to pay off old obligations. Classic Ponzi behavior hidden behind legal jargon and confident handshakes. Our forensic team estimated he was 90 days from bankruptcy, maybe less if key clients discovered the truth. "Pull up the securities footage from my laptop," I told Sarah. "December 15th, 3 years ago, the night I ended our engagement." The screen flickered to life, showing Ryan in Eleanor's study at 2 in the morning. He'd thought I was asleep, exhausted from managing Eleanor's care. The infrared camera captured him photographing her private documents, focusing on bank statements and property deeds. "He found references to Singapore," Sarah observed. "Started planning how to access the accounts through marriage. But he missed the most important detail. I said, freezing the frame where he'd overlooked a crucial document. The trust specifications. Everything required Eleanor's direct consent, not just marriage to her heir. Through the glass walls of Conference Room C, I watched Ryan pace like a caged animal. His sandy hair was disheveled, his tie loosened. The confident senior partner from this morning had evaporated, leaving behind a desperate man who'd just realized his house of cards was collapsing. "Stephanie left him," Thomas said quietly from behind me. I'd almost forgotten he was there observing everything with the careful attention of someone relearning how to be a father. "Drove away from your mother's house without a word. He's been calling her non-stop." I stood smoothing my simple sweater, the same one Stephanie had condescendingly touched hours earlier. "Let's see what Ryan wants. James, bring the full acquisition file. Thomas, you should hear this too." Ryan jumped up when we entered, his face cycling through emotions: relief, fear, calculation. "Marion, thank God. This is all a misunderstanding. The intervention, the things I said, I was just playing along with your family." "Sit," I said, simply taking my place at the head of the table. James arranged documents with practiced precision while Thomas chose a seat where he could watch both of us. "I know you're angry," Ryan continued, words tumbling over each other, "but the acquisition can still proceed. My firm has value, real value. We just need to adjust some numbers, maybe extend the due diligence period." "Your firm is insolvent," I stated, sliding the forensic report across the table. "You've been stealing from clients for 24 months. The State Bar Association will have your license by Monday." His face went white as he scanned the numbers. Every fraudulent transaction cataloged, every forged signature highlighted. We'd been thorough in ways that would have made Eleanor proud. "How long have you known?" His voice came out as a whisper. "Since the day you proposed," I admitted. "I had a background check run. Standard procedure for someone marrying into Eleanor's estate. Imagine my surprise when irregularities appeared." "But you said yes," he protested. "We planned a wedding." "I said yes to see how far you'd go," I corrected. "Every vendor you hired, every venue you booked, you paid with embezzled funds. The engagement ring purchased with Mrs. Morrison's retirement account." I pulled up another document, this one showing wire transfers. "You even tried to hack our systems last week, hired someone from the dark web to break into MJ Innovations. Unfortunately for you, our cybersecurity team traced it back to your IP address." Thomas shifted in his seat, understanding dawning on his weathered features. "You've been investigating him for 3 years. "Eleanor taught me patience," I replied. "She said the best time to reveal someone's character is when they think they've already won." Ryan's hands shook as reality crashed down. "Marion, please. Stephanie's pregnant. If this comes out, I'll lose everything." "You've already lost everything," I said. "The only question is whether you face criminal charges or just civil ones." "What do you want?" He looked broken now, the ambitious climber reduced to begging. I leaned back, studying the man I'd once thought I loved. "Full confession. Every client you've stolen, from every document you've forged. You'll work with authorities to make restitution. In exchange, I won't pursue the cyber terrorism charges for attempting to hack my company." "Cyber terrorism?" He laughed bitterly. "That's extreme." "You tried to access medical records of nursing home patients," I reminded him. "Elderly, vulnerable people whose data we protect. The FBI takes that seriously." James produced another folder, this one containing a drafted confession. Every crime detailed, every victim named, the kind of document that would end a legal career but might keep him out of federal prison. "Your wife needs stability right now," I added. "Sign this, cooperate fully, and maybe you can rebuild something honest for your child." Ryan stared at the confession like it was written in blood. "You planned this whole thing, the helicopter, the reveal, everything. You wanted us all to destroy ourselves publicly." "No," I said firmly. "I wanted to care for my grandmother in peace. You all chose to make it a spectacle. I simply refused to be your victim." He picked up the pen with trembling fingers, then paused. "What happened to you, Marion? You used to be kind." "I'm still kind," I assured him, "kind enough to offer you a path to redemption instead of just destruction. That's more than you offered me when you thought I was poor." The signature came in broken strokes, each letter sealing his fate. When he finished, James collected the documents with clinical efficiency. Ryan slumped in his chair, suit-wrinkled, dreams shattered. "Stephanie doesn't deserve this," he said quietly. "No, she doesn't," I agreed, "which is why I've offered her a position running our Family Crisis Foundation. She'll help other women who discovered their lives were built on lies." His head snapped up. "You spoke to my wife." "She called during your drive here," I revealed. "Smart woman, already filing for divorce, protecting assets for the baby. She'll be fine. Better than fine, actually. Thomas spoke for the first time since entering the room. You're giving his pregnant wife a job after what he did. Eleanor believed in breaking cycles, I explained. Stephanie and that baby didn't choose Ryan's crimes. They deserve a fresh start. Ryan stood on unsteady legs, looking older than his 34 years. I really did love you once, before I knew about the money. Maybe, I conceded. But you love the idea of wealth more. That's why you're here alone while Stephanie rebuilds with integrity. Security appeared at the door, ready to escort him out. As they led him away, he turned back one last time. Your family's right about one thing, Marion. You've changed. Yes, I smiled sadly. I learned to see people clearly. Eleanor's final gift. The conference room fell silent after his departure. Thomas stared at the abandoned chair, while James efficiently filed the confession documents. Another predator exposed another schemer facing consequences. The Morrison Group acquisition, James prompted. Cancelled, I confirmed. Notify the sellers that we've discovered irregularities. Recommend they audit their accounts immediately. My phone showed 17 missed calls from various family members, each probably processing the viral intervention video differently. But there was also a message from Stephanie. Thank you for the job offer. My baby will grow up knowing integrity matters more than appearances. He was right about one thing, Thomas said quietly. You have changed. The Marion I knew would have forgiven him, given him another chance. The Marion you knew hadn't watched her grandmother die while family members stole from her, I replied. Hadn't built something beautiful from grief and abandonment. Hadn't learned that forgiveness without accountability just enables more harm. I stood looking out at the Denver skyline. Somewhere out there, Ryan was driving home to an empty house. My family was scrambling to control a narrative that had already escaped them. And Stephanie was planning a new life built on truth rather than deception. Come on, I told Thomas. There's something else you need to see, something about Eleanor's last months that even I didn't know until recently. We left the conference room, Ryan's signed confession, the only evidence he'd ever been there. Justice served cold exactly how Eleanor would have wanted it. The elevator descended to the archives level, where we stored Eleanor's personal effects and the thousands of documents from her estate. Thomas followed silently, still processing everything he'd witnessed. As the doors opened, we were greeted by an unexpected sight. Charlotte Henderson sitting in my private conference room, her supposed simple neighbor disguise completely abandoned. She wore a sharp Saint Laurent suit, her silver hair styled in an elegant chignon. The elderly woman who'd spent years gossiping over fence posts had transformed into what she truly was, a Fortune 500 CEO who'd built an empire while the world assumed she was just another suburban retiree. Hello, Thomas, Charlotte said, her voice carrying authority that made him straighten instinctively. Surprised you shouldn't be. You've been living next door to me for 30 years and never once really looked. Mrs. Henderson, Thomas stuttered. But your cookies, your cat. All real, she laughed, a rich sound that filled the room. CEOs can bake cookies too. Mr. Whiskers is actually an excellent judge of character. He never liked Grace. I took my seat across from Charlotte while she pulled out a tablet containing decades of records. The screen showed a younger Charlotte ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, her company Henderson Industries going public to massive fanfare. Eleanor and I met in 1962. Charlotte began sliding a black and white photo across the table. Two young women in business suits stood before a small office building. We were the only women in our MBA program. Everyone said we were wasting our education, that we'd quit when we married. Eleanor never mentioned business school, Thomas said weakly. Because your father forbade her from talking about it. Charlotte's voice hardened. Said it made him look weak having a wife with ambitions. So she buried her dreams, raised her children, and watched me build what we'd planned together. The next photo showed Eleanor and Charlotte at various stages of life. Secret meetings in coffee shops, late-night planning sessions, documents being signed in lawyers' offices, a parallel life Thomas had never suspected. When I retired publicly 15 years ago, Charlotte continued, I moved next door to Eleanor. We'd made a pact if one of us achieved the dream, we'd use it to lift the other. I'd made billions while she'd been trapped in suburban domesticity. So you two planned something, I guessed. Charlotte smiled approvingly. Eleanor was brilliant with investments. Every dollar your father grudgingly allowed for household expenses, she'd stretch and save and funnel into accounts he never knew existed. Singapore was just the beginning. She pulled up financial records that made my head spin. properties in 12 countries, patent holdings in medical technology, venture capital investments that read like a who's who of successful startups. Eleanor hadn't just saved money. She'd built a shadow empire from grocery store change and birthday check deposits. But she was dying. Charlotte's voice softened. Pancreatic cancer doesn't care about bank balances, so we activated the final phase, finding an heir who deserved it. "Why Marion?" Thomas asked. "Why not leave it to charity?" Charlotte laughed again, but this time with bitter edge. Because Eleanor wanted to prove a point, that given the same opportunities, a woman who'd been dismissed and diminished could build something extraordinary. Marion wasn't just her granddaughter. She was her revenge against everyone who'd made her small. She turned to me, eyes twinkling. "We tested you for months before Eleanor got sick. Anonymous job offers with massive salaries, investment opportunities that would have set you up for life. You turned them all down to stay near family. The Henderson Industries recruiter," I realized. "That was you. Chief of staff position, $500,000 salary, stock options," Charlotte confirmed. "You said family came first." That's when Eleanor knew. Thomas looked between us, understanding dawning. "You orchestrated everything. The illness bringing Marion home, the late nights together, even the intervention today." "The intervention was their own stupidity," Charlotte corrected. "But yes, Eleanor and I prepared for every contingency. Hidden cameras to catch their theft, legal frameworks to protect Marion's inheritance, business plans for her to execute while caring for Eleanor." She showed us another document, blueprints for MJ Innovations, drawn in Eleanor's shaky hand. Every department, every product line, every innovation we'd launched had been sketched out during those final months. "She couldn't build it herself," Charlotte said quietly, "but she could teach Marion. Every story about her failed business attempts, every idea she'd shelved, every innovation she'd dreamed, they all became Marion's blueprint." "The elder care technology," I breathed. "She designed it all. While dying from cancer that might have been caught earlier with better monitoring," Charlotte confirmed. "Irony was always Eleanor's forte." Thomas slumped in his chair, decades of assumptions crumbling. "She told me she was happy, said raising children was fulfillment enough." "She lied," Charlotte said bluntly. "Because you needed her to, because admitting frustration would have meant fights and possibly divorce and definitely no access to her children. So she smiled and baked and hosted dinner parties while dying inside." The tablet showed more records. Charlotte's secret mentorship of Marion conference calls conducted while I sat beside Eleanor's hospital bed, venture capitalists introduced as chance meetings at medical facilities. They'd orchestrated my education in entrepreneurship while everyone thought I was just holding a dying woman's hand. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked Charlotte. "Why let me think I was doing this alone?" "Because you needed to believe it was your achievement," she explained. Eleanor insisted. She said confidence built on someone else's foundation crumbles. But confidence earned through struggle, that's bedrock. "So you pretended to be just a neighbor," Thomas said slowly. "Attended Grace's book clubs and suburban parties while secretly running a billion-dollar corporation. Retirement is boring." Charlotte shrugged. "Besides, someone needed to watch over Eleanor's investments, and Marion once we identified her as the heir. Do you know how many times I've prevented your family from accidentally discovering the truth? Derek tried to break into Eleanor's safe 17 times. I had to pretend my cat was stuck in your attic to interrupt him." She pulled up her phone, showing security footage from her own hidden cameras. Years of family gatherings where she'd sat quietly in corners recording every slight against Eleanor, every dismissive comment about women's capabilities, every moment that proved why Marion deserved the inheritance. "Grace's intervention plan started 3 months ago," Charlotte revealed. "The moment Marion's company filed for its first patent, your wife monitors business registrations, obsessively looking for opportunities. When she saw MJ Innovations, she knew Marion had something valuable. But she didn't know what I realized, just that I'd registered a company. So she planned to force you into signing away rights to everything," Charlotte confirmed. "The family meeting, the public humiliation, the forged documents, classic Grace always overplaying her hand." Thomas stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "You're telling me my mother and my neighbor spent decades planning this, that my wife's cruelty triggered a revenge plot years in the making?" "Not revenge," Charlotte corrected. "Justice. Eleanor deserved to see her ideas change the world. Marion deserved to inherit without interference. I deserved to watch Grace faint on her own lawn when she realized the poor daughter was richer than everyone combined." She stood too, gathering her things with practiced efficiency. My part is done. Eleanor's wishes fulfilled, Marion's inheritance secured your family's true nature, exposed for the world to see. Rather poetic, don't you think? Where will you go? I asked. Back to being Mrs. Henderson. She smiled. At least until the next board meeting. Someone needs to feed Mr. Whiskers, and Grace's meltdown will provide entertainment for months. She paused at the door, looking back at Thomas. Your daughter built something extraordinary from loss and pain. Your mother would have done the same given the chance. The question is, what will you build from this truth? After she left, Thomas and I sat in silence, surrounded by evidence of two women's determination to transcend the limitations placed on them. Eleanor's sketches covered the walls, innovations born from frustration, dreams deferred but not destroyed. I need to apologize, Thomas said finally. To you, to Eleanor's memory, to Charlotte, for decades of blindness. Apologies are just words, I replied, echoing Eleanor's teachings. What matters is what comes next. My phone buzzed with a notification from our communications team. The intervention video had reached 100 million views. News outlets worldwide were picking up the story. The family WhatsApp group showed dozens of panicked messages, but one stood out. From an unknown number, "This isn't over. We'll contest everything. You can't humiliate us and walk away. Grace." I showed Thomas the message. His face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "Yes, she can," he said firmly. "And if Grace tries anything else, she'll discover I've been keeping records too. 30 years of her schemes, all documented. Eleanor wasn't the only one who knew how to plan ahead." The plot deepened, and I realized the intervention had only been the opening act. The real show was just beginning. The 3 black SUVs pulled into my mother's driveway with the precision of a military operation, their tinted windows reflecting the chaos still unfolding on the lawn. FBI agents emerged in synchronized movements, their navy windbreakers bearing the white letters that made neighbors gasp and phones rise to record this latest act in our family drama. I stood near the helicopter watching as Special Agent Rodriguez approached with the measured steps of someone who'd served warrants to far more dangerous individuals than my scheming relatives. Behind her, a team of agents flanked representatives from the IRS and State Attorney General's office. "Ms. Johnson," Rodriguez said, producing her credentials. "We received your evidence package 3 hours ago. Judge Martinez fast-tracked the warrants based on the severity of the financial crimes." Through the large front window, I could see my family scrambling like disturbed insects. Derek attempted to flee through the back door, only to find agents already positioned there. Patricia clutched her fake charity documents to her chest, as if they could shield her from consequences. Robert stood frozen, his embezzlement ledgers probably flashing through his mind like a countdown to imprisonment. "Shall we?" Rodriguez asked, gesturing toward the house. The front door remained open from the constant stream of neighbors, so our entrance was unimpeded. The agents fanned out with practiced efficiency while Rodriguez announced their presence to the assembled crowd. "FBI, everyone remain where you are. We have warrants for Derek Johnson, Robert Matthews, and Patricia Matthews." Lauren's phone was still recording the live stream viewer count, now exceeding 70 million. Comments flooded past too quickly to read, but I caught fragments: real-life crime drama, the family from hell, justice served cold. "This is harassment," Robert blustered, trying to summon his business authority voice. "Marion's obviously orchestrated this as revenge for a simple family disagreement." Agent Rodriguez smiled thinly. "Sir, we've been investigating your embezzlement from Johnson Family Enterprises for 18 months. Ms. Johnson's evidence simply accelerated our timeline." She produced the warrant, reading the charges with clinical detachment. "Robert Matthews, you're under arrest for embezzlement, tax fraud, and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent." As agents cuffed, Robert Patricia made a desperate play. "I run a charity. This is all a misunderstanding. The Children's Dream Foundation helps kids." "No, ma'am," another agent corrected, showing her a thick folder. "You run a personal checking account with a misleading name. We have 73 instances of fraud, including using deceased children's names for fake donation campaigns." The room erupted. Grace shrieked about lawyers and connections, while Patricia was led away in handcuffs. Neighbors pressed against windows, their phones capturing every moment of the family's downfall. Derek tried one last gambit, pointing at me with his free hand as agents secured the other. "She set us up. Marion knew we'd take things from Grandma. She wanted this to happen. Actually," I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I begged you all to visit her. Every text saved, every voicemail recorded. I offered to pay for your gas, arrange your schedules, anything to get you there. You chose theft over time with her. Rodriguez pulled out an evidence bag containing Eleanor's jewelry, the pieces Derek had stolen glowing dully through the plastic. Mr. Johnson, these items were found in a pawn shop registered to your girlfriend's name. The serial numbers match Mrs. Eleanor Johnson's insurance records. Girlfriend. Grace's shock cut through her fury. Derek, you're married. The chaos deepened as family secrets tumbled out. Lauren frantically tried to delete her Instagram, but screen recordings had already preserved her confession to credit card fraud. Her designer goods, the trips to fashion weeks, the luxury lifestyle she'd flaunted, all funded by a dying woman's credit lines. Your turn, Ms. Sinclair, Rodriguez said to Lauren. You're not under arrest yet, but you'll need to come in for questioning. Bring a lawyer. Thomas had remained silent through the arrests, standing apart from both his family and the FBI. Now he stepped forward, reaching into his jacket. Every agent tensed, hands moving to weapons, but he slowly produced a manila envelope. I've been documenting everything for 5 years, he announced, his voice carrying across the stunned room. Every forged signature, every skimmed payment, every false charity receipt. I was too weak to stop them, but not too weak to prepare for this day. He handed the envelope to Rodriguez, who scanned its contents with growing interest. This corroborates everything in Ms. Johnson's files, plus additional crimes we weren't aware of. You betrayed us. Grace turned on Thomas with venom. Your own family. I chose truth over complicity, Thomas replied steadily. Finally. The neighbors had formed a complete audience. Now the intervention's original witnesses to my supposed failure, now watching my family's actual collapse. Mrs. Chen live-streamed to her prayer group while Dr. Peterson took notes like he was observing a clinical study in family dysfunction. Bradley attempted to slip out during the chaos, but I'd anticipated that. Agent Rodriguez, you might want to check Bradley Johnson's laptop, the one he left in his car when the helicopter landed. 2 agents returned minutes later with the device. Bradley's face went white as they explained they'd already broken his weak password. Investment fraud, insider trading, SEC violations cascading across the screen in real time. How? Bradley whispered. Your fake Rolex has a manufacturing date 2 years after the model was supposedly discontinued, I explained. Once I knew you were pretending at wealth, investigating your actual finances was simple. Every client you've defrauded is being notified as we speak. Rodriguez's team worked with assembly line efficiency. Evidence-tagged perpetrators cuffed rights red with monotone precision. The local news had arrived, their cameras capturing what would become Denver's most watched crime story of the decade. Grace made one last stand, drawing herself up with whatever dignity remained. This is still my house. Everyone out. Now. Actually, I said, producing my own documents, it's Eleanor's house. And according to her real will filed in Singapore to avoid local tampering, it's mine now. You have 72 hours to vacate. You can't. Grace lunged at me, but agents intercepted her. I decorated every room I hosted 40 years of holidays here. With Eleanor's money, I reminded her, while making her feel unwelcome in her own home. She told me about the Thanksgiving you made her eat in the kitchen because important guests needed the dining room. Lauren had collapsed into a chair, designer makeup running in streams. Marion, please. We're sisters. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything, I said quietly. Until you decided I was worthless without money. Until you plotted to humiliate me publicly. Until you smiled while planning to steal my birthright. Rodriguez finished directing her team and approached me. Ms. Johnson, we'll need you to come to the federal building tomorrow for formal statements. Your evidence is impeccable, but procedure requires official documentation. Of course, I agreed. My legal team will coordinate. As the SUVs loaded with my arrested relatives' neighbors began approaching, some offered condolences for family tragedy. Others congratulated me on escape from toxicity. But I was watching Thomas, who stood alone by Eleanor's rose bushes. The offer stands, I told him. Chief Ethics Officer at MJ Innovations. But you'll start at entry level, prove yourself like everyone else. I'd expect nothing less, he said. Eleanor would approve of making me earn redemption. Sirens faded as the FBI convoy departed. Grace stood in the doorway of what was no longer her house, surveying the wreckage of her carefully constructed life. The neighbors dispersed slowly, already texting and calling to spread the story. 72 hours, I reminded Grace. The moving trucks arrive Monday. Where will I go? For the first time, her voice held genuine fear rather than manipulation. That's not my problem, I said. Just like my struggles weren't yours when you thought I was poor. I walked back to the helicopter, leaving behind the house where I'd grown up, where Eleanor had been diminished, where family meant obligation rather than love. Charlotte Henderson watched from her window, raising a champagne glass in salute. As we lifted off, I saw the neighborhood that had witnessed my supposed humiliation transformed into the stage for my family's downfall. Justice served with helicopter precision exactly as Eleanor and Charlotte had planned. My phone showed hundreds of messages. Job applications from former employees of Bradley's firm, thank you notes from Patricia's fake charity victims' interview requests from major media outlets. The story had transcended family drama to become a parable about greed, justice, and the price of underestimating those we claim to love. "Where to now?" the pilot asked. "The office," I decided. "We have a foundation to launch and an empire to run. Eleanor's legacy is just beginning." Below, my childhood home grew smaller, taking with it decades of dysfunction. But somewhere in those rooms, Eleanor's spirit probably laughed at the divine justice of it all. The family who'd dismissed her had been undone by the granddaughter who'd loved her. The legal reckoning was complete, but one more surprise remained in Eleanor's carefully orchestrated plan. Thomas arrived at MJ Innovations the next morning at 6 a.m., an hour before I'd asked him to come. Security footage showed him standing in the lobby, studying the wall of patents bearing Eleanor's posthumous name, his weathered face cycling through emotions I'd rarely seen him express. When I met him in the executive conference room, he'd transformed. Gone was the passive man who'd enabled decades of family cruelty. His gray suit was modest, but pressed his posture straight, his eyes clear with purpose. I remembered from childhood before compromise became his default. "I brought these," he said, producing 3 banker's boxes from beside his chair. "Journals, recordings, evidence I've collected since your mother first started her schemes. I was too cowardly to use them before, but maybe they'll help others now." I opened the first box, finding notebooks dated back 37 years. His meticulous handwriting documented Grace's first forged check, her initial manipulation of Eleanor's accounts, the slow escalation of greed that poisoned our entire family. "You knew from the beginning," I said, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. "Why stay silent?" Thomas sank into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. "Because I loved her once. The real her before money became her religion. I kept thinking if I'd just waited, documented, prepared someday, I'd find the courage to stop it." He pulled out a particular journal opening to a page bookmarked with a photo. Young Grace smiled beside him at their wedding, radiant with what looked like genuine joy. Below, his notes described their first apartment, their shared dreams, the woman she'd been before Eleanor's wealth became accessible. "Your mother grew up poor," he explained, "not just modest, grinding, humiliating poverty. When she married into the Johnson family and discovered Eleanor's hidden wealth, something broke inside her, or maybe revealed itself. I could never decide which." The next box contained recordings on old cassette tapes, each labeled with dates and events. Family meetings where they planned to gaslight Eleanor. Conversations about making her doubt her mental capacity. I recorded everything from my study, too ashamed to intervene, but unable to ignore. I inserted one tape into the player I'd brought. Grace's younger voice filled the room, coaching Derek and Lauren on how to manipulate their grandmother. "Always mention how tired she looks. Suggest she's forgetting things. If we can get power of attorney by Christmas—" "I failed Eleanor," Thomas said simply. "Failed you. Failed myself. But maybe these records can prevent other families from suffering the same poison." "Tell me about the good years," I requested, surprising him, before it all went wrong. Eleanor sometimes mentioned them but never gave details. Thomas's face softened. "Your mother was brilliant with languages. She wanted to be a translator for the UN Travel the World Bridge cultures. We'd spend hours planning adventures, learning phrases in Mandarin and Arabic and Swahili." He showed me another photo, Grace teaching elementary school, surrounded by immigrant children she'd helped learn English. She volunteered every weekend, said helping others find their voice was her calling. "What changed?" "Eleanor invited us to move into the family property when you were born," Thomas recalled. Grace discovered the scope of Johnson family wealth, not just comfortable money, but generational wealth. She started calculating what each child would inherit, planning how to maximize access. The transformation had been gradual but complete. The idealistic teacher became a society manipulator. The woman who'd helped immigrants find their voice silenced her own mother-in-laws. The poverty she'd escaped became a demon that drove her to ensure she'd never be vulnerable again. "But you could have left," I pointed out. "Taken us kids started over." "With what judge granting me custody in 1995? Thomas laughed bitterly. A housewife mother versus an unemployed father who'd given up his career to support hers. Besides, I convinced myself staying meant protecting you and Lauren from the worst of it. The third box held the most damning evidence documents showing Grace's attempts to have Eleanor declared mentally incompetent legal filings Thomas had intercepted and hidden medical records she'd tried to falsify with Patricia's help. 6 years ago, they nearly succeeded, he revealed. Had a doctor ready to sign commitment papers. I threatened divorce exposure, everything I could think of. It was the only time I stood up to them before yesterday. What made you stop them? You, he said simply. You'd started visiting Eleanor more frequently. I knew if they put her away, you'd lose the only family member who truly loved you. So I made a deal with the devil. I'd stay quiet about everything else if they left Eleanor alone. We sat in silence, processing decades of complicity and compromise. Through the windows, Denver sprawled beneath us, oblivious to the family dramas playing out in its towers. My phone showed continued fallout from yesterday's arrests, Bradley's clients filing lawsuits, Patricia's fake charity victims organizing a class action, Derek's assets being frozen. I've drafted something, Thomas said, pulling out a final document. A public confession. Everything I knew when I knew it, why I stayed silent. If you're building a foundation for family financial abuse victims, they need to know how enablers work too. The confession was brutal in its honesty. He detailed every moment of cowardice, every rationalization, every time he'd chosen comfortable silence over difficult truth. It would destroy any reputation he had left, but that seemed to be the point. You don't have to do this, I said. Yes, I do, he insisted. Eleanor forgave me before she died, you know. Said she understood why I'd stayed even if she wished I'd been stronger. But forgiveness doesn't erase the need for accountability. When did she forgive you? The last week? Thomas's voice broke slightly. You'd stepped out for supplies. She asked me to come closer, held my hand, said, Thomas, you're going to help Marion when this is over. Stop living in fear. It's exhausting. I remembered that week, the final spiral before Eleanor left us. I thought she was sleeping during my absence, but apparently she'd been setting final pieces in motion. She left you something, I realized, pulling up estate documents on my tablet. A letter in the Singapore files. I wasn't supposed to give it to you unless you chose truth over family. Thomas's hands shook as he opened Eleanor's final message. I stepped away, giving him privacy, but I could see tears streaming down his face as he read. When he finished, he handed it to me. Thomas, if Marion has given you this letter, you've finally found your courage. I'm proud of you. The man I met 45 years ago, who read poetry at the coffee shop and dreamed of teaching literature, he's still in there. Grace couldn't kill him, just bury him under fear and obligation. Use what you've documented. Help Marion build something better. Your silence aided their cruelty, so let your voice aid others' healing. Consider it penance or redemption, or simply the right thing delayed, but not denied. You were the son I chose, even if I couldn't save you from the family you chose. But it's not too late. Marion needs a father, not an enabler. Be that man. With love and expectation, Eleanor. Thomas folded the letter carefully, placing it in his jacket pocket. When do I start? Monday, I decided. Entry-level compliance officer reporting to Sarah. You'll help design systems that detect family financial abuse before it destroys lives. Your experience as an enabler will help us understand warning signs others might miss. Minimum wage, he asked with slight smile. To start, Eleanor believed in earning advancement. I pulled up employment documents. But full benefits, including therapy coverage. You'll need it, and so will many employees we hire from similar situations. He signed without hesitation, no negotiation or complaint. The man who'd spent decades avoiding confrontation committed to a role that would require him to confront abuse daily. There's something else, Thomas said as we concluded. Grace sent messages this morning. She's staying with her sister in Colorado Springs, planning to contest the will. She's convinced Bradley's lawyer friends will find loopholes. I smiled, remembering Eleanor's meticulous planning. Let her try. Charlotte Henderson has recordings of Grace discussing plans to murder Eleanor for inheritance. We held that back from the FBI, but if she contests anything... Thomas paled. Murder. Theoretical discussions with Patricia about untraceable poisons. I confirmed. They never acted on it, But conspiracy to commit murder doesn't have a statute of limitations. The weight of his family's evil settled over Thomas like a shroud. But instead of crushing him, it seemed to strengthen his resolve. He stood straighter, meeting my eyes directly. "I'll spend whatever years I have left trying to balance the scales," he promised. "Not for forgiveness, I don't deserve that, but because Eleanor was right. It's the right thing delayed but not denied." As he left to begin preparing for his new role, I reflected on redemption's complex nature. Thomas would never undo his decades of silence, but he could help prevent others' suffering. His documentation would become training materials. His insights into enabler psychology would shape our foundation's approach. My phone buzzed with a message from Charlotte. "Saw Thomas leaving. Eleanor would be pleased. Phase 3, ready when you are." Phase 3. Eleanor's plan had more surprises waiting, but first I had a foundation to launch and a father to rebuild. The family that had tried to break me was creating the very tools for healing others. Justice, as Eleanor taught me, wasn't just about punishment. It was about transformation, even for those who'd failed when it mattered most. The main auditorium at MJ Innovations had been transformed into a courtroom of conscience. 200 employees filled the seats, their faces reflecting everything from curiosity to concern. As my family members filed onto the stage I'd had specially configured for this moment. The live stream cameras were already rolling. If they'd wanted public spectacle at their intervention, I'd give them public accountability. Derek sat hunched in an ill-fitting suit borrowed from courthouse, holding his designer image stripped away with his seized assets. Lauren fidgeted with her phone, though I'd had the Wi-Fi configured to block social media access from the stage. Patricia and Robert appeared via video link from federal detention, their orange jumpsuits a stark contrast to the charity galas and business meetings they'd once dominated. Bradley stood apart, his false confidence shattered like his fake Rolex. Only Grace sat with any semblance of composure, though her carefully styled appearance couldn't hide the desperation in her eyes. Her 72 hours were nearly up, and she'd exhausted every legal avenue to challenge Eleanor's will. "Thank you all for coming." I began standing at the podium with Eleanor's photo displayed on the screen behind me. "Today represents something Eleanor believed in deeply, the possibility of redemption through genuine accountability." The employees shifted, unsure what to expect. Many were recent hires from backgrounds like mine, family abuse survivors, financial violence victims, people who'd been diminished by those claiming to love them. They deserved to see how we'd handle our own family's cruelty. "Each of you tried to steal from a dying woman." I continued, letting the words land heavily. "You plotted to humiliate me publicly, forge documents, and destroy my future. By any measure, you deserve nothing but prosecution and exile." Derek started to speak, but I raised a hand. "You'll each have a chance to respond. But first, listen to what I'm offering." Sarah stepped forward with employment contracts, placing one before each family member. The terms were visible on the screen for everyone to see. "Derek," I addressed him first, "you stole $37,000 in jewelry and cash from Eleanor. You'll work in our warehouse at minimum wage until that amount is repaid through garnished wages. Estimated time 3 years. You'll also attend mandatory therapy for entitlement and theft addiction." His face flushed, but he remained silent. "Your supervisor will be Marcus Chen, who you might remember. You fired him from the family business for not fitting the company image when what you meant was his accent bothered you. He now runs our entire logistics operation." Gasps rippled through the audience. Marcus stood his expression professionally neutral despite the poetic justice of the arrangement. "Lauren," I continued, $62,000 in credit card fraud. You'll join our social media team as an unpaid intern creating content about financial literacy and the dangers of materialism. Every designer item you bought with Eleanor's money will be auctioned for our foundation." "As an intern?" Lauren's voice cracked. "But I have a degree." "In communications you earned through cheating," I reminded her. "Yes, we pulled your academic records. You'll report to Aisha Patel, who you publicly mocked for wearing the same outfit twice to family gatherings. She now heads our global communications strategy." Patricia and Robert watched from their screens as I outlined their options. "Upon release, you'll each have positions in our foundation's community service division. Patricia, you'll work with actual children's charities, learning what real nonprofit work entails, supervised by investigators who ensure every hour is genuine. Robert, forensic accounting support. You'll help identify embezzlement schemes in family businesses, using your expertise to prevent rather than perpetrate. Your parole officer has already approved the arrangement. Bradley stood stiffly as I reached his proposition. Securities fraud is serious, Bradley, but the SEC has agreed to reduce charges if you cooperate fully. You'll work in our compliance department helping design systems to detect the investment schemes you once orchestrated. Starting salary $32,000. No bonuses, no stock options, just honest work. That's insulting, he protested. I have an MBA from Wharton. You have a degree built on lies and a reputation in ruins, I corrected. This is more than you offered me when you thought I was poor. It's a chance to rebuild with integrity. Finally, I turned to Grace. Her portion required the most delicate handling as her crimes went beyond financial to deep psychological abuse. Grace Johnson, I said formally, you systematically isolated and diminished Eleanor for 40 years. You taught your children that cruelty was currency and love was leverage. The damage you've caused is immeasurable. She lifted her chin defiantly, still trying to project authority. However, I continued, Eleanor left specific instructions about you. She believed even the worst family members could choose differently if given proper incentive. The screen displayed a modest apartment complex in Aurora, one of our affordable housing properties for healthcare workers. You'll work as a resident services coordinator helping elderly residents navigate healthcare systems and family relationships. Your supervisor will be Dr. Amelia Chang, whose doctoral thesis on elder abuse featured your treatment of Eleanor as a case study. You want me to be a servant? Grace hissed. I want you to spend every day facing what you denied Eleanor, I replied. Dignity, respect, and genuine care in aging. The salary is livable but modest, $40,000 annually. You'll experience the financial constraints you once mocked others for enduring. Each family member would also participate in our foundation's programs. Weekly therapy sessions addressing their specific issues, narcissism, greed, entitlement, cruelty. Monthly community service beyond their employment. Quarterly reviews where their progress would determine continued employment. These positions come with conditions, Sarah explained, taking over the legal details. Any violation of terms, any attempt at manipulation or theft, any failure to show genuine effort at rehabilitation results in immediate termination and full prosecution for past crimes. What if we refuse? Derek asked, though his voice lacked conviction. Then you face the full legal consequences of your actions. I said simply, federal prison for most of you. Perpetual unemployment for all. Your choice. The auditorium fell silent, except for the hum of recording equipment. My employees watched intently. Many had suggested harsher punishments, wanting my family to suffer as they had. But Eleanor's vision was transformation, not just retribution. I'll do it. Thomas spoke from the employee section where he'd been sitting. I've already started my position. It's hard facing your failures daily, but it's also healing. His words seemed to break something in the others. Lauren looked at her designer bag, probably calculating how many years of honest work it represented. The internship, she said quietly. I'll take it. One by one they accepted. Derek grudgingly, Patricia tearfully, Robert with resignation. Bradley tried negotiating but eventually conceded. Only Grace held out, staring at me with decades of resentment. You're enjoying this, she accused. No, I said honestly. Watching family destroy itself brings no joy, but watching them choose accountability, that brings hope. What would Eleanor say? Grace played her last card, invoking the woman she'd tormented. I smiled sadly. She already said it. She left each of you letters to be delivered only if you accepted these positions. Your first day of honest work earns you her final words. That broke Grace's resistance. The possibility of Eleanor's forgiveness, even posthumously, was too powerful to refuse. She reached for the contract with trembling hands. I'll need training, she admitted. I don't know how to serve others. That's the point, I assured her. You'll learn, and maybe eventually you'll understand what you denied Eleanor, the dignity of being seen as fully human. As they signed their contracts, the employees applauded, not mockingly, but with recognition of witnessing something rare. Accountability accepted transformation, beginning cycles breaking in real time. One more thing, I announced. These positions aren't charity. You'll be held to the same standards as any employee. Performance reviews, advancement possibilities, termination if warranted. Eleanor believed in earning success, not inheriting it. The orientation packets Sarah distributed included their supervisor's contact information, therapy schedules, and copies of Eleanor's biography, required reading for understanding the woman they'd wronged. When do we start? Robert asked from the screen. Upon release for you and Patricia, Monday for the others. I looked at each of them. Use the time to reflect on who you want to become. These jobs aren't punishment, they're possibilities. As security escorted them out to prepare for their new lives, employees approached with questions and comments. Many shared their own stories of family financial abuse, expressing amazement at seeing perpetrators choose accountability. Will it work? Asked Destiny, a young developer who'd escaped her own toxic family. I don't know, I admitted. But Eleanor believed in second chances earned through effort. If even one of them genuinely transforms, her faith is vindicated. My phone showed messages from around the world, other companies wanting to implement similar rehabilitation programs, families seeking guidance on accountability processes. The live stream had garnered millions of views in hours, sparking conversations about justice versus vengeance. Charlotte appeared on the main screen via secure connection from New York. Eleanor would be proud, she said simply. You've given them what she never received a chance to choose differently. The proposition was complete. My family faced futures of honest work, genuine service, and daily confrontation with their past choices. Some would rise to the challenge, others might fail, but all had been offered what they'd denied others, an opportunity for redemption through effort. As the auditorium emptied, I stood before Eleanor's photo, remembering her words during those final weeks. Don't let them rot in their cruelty, dear. Challenge them to change. Some souls need structure to find their conscience. Time would tell if her faith in transformation was justified. But for today, the family that had tried to steal everything had been given the most valuable gift of all, a chance to earn their humanity back. Within 6 hours of the employee meeting, the live stream had shattered viewing records across platforms. Billionaire CEO offers minimum wage jobs to criminal family dominated headlines from CNN to the BBC. My phone vibrated constantly with interview requests, but I had something more important planned, using this viral moment to launch Eleanor's true legacy. The MJ Innovations Media Center had been transformed into a broadcast studio. Professional lighting illuminated a simple set featuring Eleanor's portrait and displays of our elder care technology. Instead of accepting network interviews, we'd host our own announcement, maintaining control of the narrative. Ms. Johnson, my communications director, Aisha, approached with tablet in hand. We have confirmed virtual attendance from major outlets worldwide. The family employment video has reached 200 million views. Twitter is calling it the ultimate revenge, and restorative justice gone viral. Perfect timing, I said, adjusting the microphone. Is Charlotte ready? The main screen flickered to life, showing Charlotte Henderson in her Manhattan office, no longer hiding her CEO identity. Split screens revealed other participants: Senator Warren from Washington, 3 Nobel laureates in economics and medicine, and dozens of family financial abuse survivors who'd reached out since the intervention. We're live in 2 minutes, Aisha announced. The foundation website is ready to handle traffic. Legal has approved all documentation. Financial pledges are confirmed. I thought of Eleanor's words during one of our midnight conversations. Money is just stored energy, dear. It only matters when it moves, when it works, when it helps. Today, her stored energy would begin its true work. The cameras went live. Around the world, millions tuned in, expecting more family drama. Instead, they'd witness something Eleanor had dreamed of: transformation of pain into purpose. Good afternoon. I began, my voice steady, despite the magnitude of this moment. I'm Marian Johnson, CEO of MJ Innovations and granddaughter of Eleanor Johnson. You may know me from a viral video showing my family's intervention attempt. Today I want to talk about what happens after the cameras usually stop rolling. The screen behind me displayed statistics: elder financial abuse affecting millions, family theft, destroying retirements, isolation, enabling exploitation. Numbers Eleanor had researched during her final months, determined to quantify the problem she'd lived. The Marian Johnson Foundation for Family Financial Justice launches today with an initial funding of $100 million. But this isn't just about money, it's about changing how we recognize and respond to family financial abuse. Charlotte appeared on the main screen. Henderson Industries is matching Marian's commitment. That's $200 million dedicated to protecting vulnerable family members from those who should love them most. The response was immediate. Comments flooded in from viewers sharing their stories: inheritance theft, elder exploitation, family members who smiled while stealing. The pain my family had inflicted wasn't unique, it was epidemic. Our foundation will provide legal services, safe housing, and financial literacy programs, I continued. But more importantly, we're creating the Eleanor Johnson database, a resource connecting victims with verified therapists, lawyers, and support groups specializing in family financial abuse. Senator Warren joined the broadcast. I'm introducing legislation inspired by Eleanor's story. The Family Financial Protection Act will close loopholes that allow relatives to exploit vulnerable family members without consequence. More pledges appeared on screen. Tech billionaires moved by the story. Celebrities who'd hidden their own family financial abuse. By 10 minutes and commitments exceeded $500 million. But money alone won't solve this, I emphasized. We need cultural change. Family financial abuse thrives in silence, protected by misplaced loyalty and shame. Today, that silence ends. The screen shifted to show employment contracts my family had signed. You've seen accountability in action. Perpetrators given structured paths to redemption. This model will be available to any organization wanting to implement restorative justice programs. Aisha signaled breaking news. Lauren's Instagram had reactivated with a single post, a photo of her designer goods piled for auction captioned, "Converting vanity to value. Every piece bought with stolen money will fund survivor services. My first act as an intern learning accountability." The post had gained 3 million likes in minutes. Comments ranged from skeptical to supportive, but the impact was undeniable. A perpetrator publicly choosing transformation inspired both hope and heated debate. I want to address the criticism, I said, acknowledging the harder conversations. Many ask why I'm giving criminals jobs instead of just prosecuting. Why offer redemption to those who showed no mercy? Eleanor's photo filled the screen as I continued. Because my grandmother believed cycles can break. Hurt people, but helped people can help people. These employment programs include mandatory therapy, community service, and daily confrontation with their crime's impact. It's harder than prison in many ways, no hiding from who you've been. Charlotte shared her screen showing foundation infrastructure already operating. We've processed 3,000 applications for assistance in the first hour. Emergency funds are being distributed. Legal teams are mobilizing. A notification appeared Bradley had sent a video from orientation. Against legal advice but with apparent genuine emotion, he faced the camera. I built my fake success on real suffering. Starting over at minimum wage isn't punishment, it's possibility. To anyone I defrauded, I'm working to make amends. His video sparked a wave. Derek posted from the warehouse, sweat staining his shirt as he learned honest labor. Patricia shared requirements for her community service. Even Robert from Federal Holding announced plans to testify about embezzlement schemes to help other businesses protect themselves. Only Grace remained silent, but Thomas filled that void. As someone who enabled abuse through silence, I urge other complicit family members speak up now. Your cowardice compounds their cruelty. Break free before it's too late. The foundation website crashed from traffic, but Aisha's team had prepared mirror sites. Donations poured in $10 from pensioners, $10 million from tech founders. Eleanor's dream of systematic change was manifesting in real time. We're also announcing the Eleanor Awards, I revealed. Annual recognition for individuals who transform family financial abuse into advocacy. Winners receive funding to scale their impact because every survivor who speaks saves others from suffering. An hour into the broadcast, pledges exceeded $1 billion. Major banks announced they'd implement our verification protocols for elder accounts. Law schools committed to teaching family financial abuse courses. The intervention video that began as humiliation had become a catalyst for global change. Before we close, I said, emotion finally entering my voice, I want to share something Eleanor wrote during her last week. Her handwriting appeared on screen, shaky but clear. If my pain can prevent one grandmother from dying, believing her family only saw dollar signs, it's worthwhile. If Marion's strength inspires one granddaughter to stand against exploitation, I'm vindicated. Money stolen can be recovered. Time lost is gone forever. Choose love while you can. My family's criminal intervention had transformed into society's conscience intervention. Charlotte called privately after the broadcast. Phase 4 tomorrow. Yes, I confirmed. Eleanor's biggest surprise yet. As night fell over Denver, I stood in my office watching the city lights. Somewhere out there, my family was preparing for their first honest jobs. Around the world, survivors were finding resources they'd desperately needed. Eleanor's legacy was lifting thousands from situations she'd endured alone. The media storm raged on, but at its center was unexpected calm. Purpose-fulfilled promises kept pain transformed into power for others. Tomorrow would bring Eleanor's final revelation. Tonight belonged to the grandmother who'd refused to let cruelty have the last word. The tablet James handed me weighed almost nothing, but its contents would shatter remaining illusions about our family's dysfunction. Eleanor's video message had been locked in digital escrow, programmed to release only after the Foundation launched her way of ensuring good emerged from grief before truth completed its reckoning. "Your family has gathered as requested," James informed me. "They seem apprehensive." We'd assembled everyone in MJ Innovations Memorial Garden, a rooftop sanctuary I'd designed to honor Eleanor's love of growing things. Derek stood awkwardly in his warehouse uniform, sweat still drying from his morning shift. Lauren clutched her intern badge like a life preserver. Grace sat rigidly beside Thomas, who'd earned his first positive performance review. Even Patricia and Robert attended virtually their prison tablets connected to our secure network. "Thank you for coming." I began noting how different they looked after just 1 week of honest work. Eleanor left something for all of us, a message she recorded before her death with Charlotte's help. Charlotte appeared on a nearby screen from New York, her expression unreadable. "What you're about to see Eleanor planned for years. She wanted truth told but healing possible. Remember that as you watch." I activated the tablet. Eleanor's face filled the screen, not from her final days, but from 3 years ago, shortly after her diagnosis. She sat in her study surrounded by the books and papers that chronicled her hidden life. "My dear family," Eleanor began, her voice strong despite circumstances. "If you're watching this, Marion has succeeded in ways that fill my heart with pride. The Foundation exists, accountability has begun, and perhaps, just perhaps, you're ready for complete truth." Derek shifted uncomfortably. Lauren had stopped recording for the first time I could remember. Grace's mask of composure showed hairline cracks. "Let me start with love," Eleanor continued. "Despite everything, I loved each of you. Not the personas you wore or the greed you harbored, but the souls underneath, wounded and warped by circumstances you didn't create, but chose to perpetuate." The scene shifted to show documents, photos, records spanning decades. Eleanor narrated with prosecutorial precision. "Grace, you weren't the first to marry into this family for money. My own mother-in-law did the same, treating me as you later treated me, as competition for resources rather than companion in life. The Johnson family has cycled through this greed for generations." Grace's face went white as Eleanor revealed financial records from the 1940s showing similar patterns of theft and manipulation. "I swore I'd break the cycle with my children. I failed. Your father, Thomas, was too gentle to resist either his mother or his wife. The poison passed on. But here's what none of you knew." Eleanor's eyes sparked with long-held secrets. "I wasn't just a victim. I was a student. Every slight, every theft, every manipulation I documented and learned. Because I had my own inheritance hidden from family vultures for 70 years. The screen showed a sepia photograph, 2 young girls before a grand Swiss estate. My twin sister Margaret, whom you all believe died in childhood. Our parents' divorce split everything, including us. She went to Switzerland with our father's fortune. I stayed in America with our mother's bitterness." Charlotte's expression confirmed what I was realizing. The revelation wasn't just about money, but identity itself. "Margaret and I reunited secretly 50 years ago," Eleanor continued. "She'd built an empire in biomedical technology, never married, never had children. When she passed 5 years ago, she left everything to me. Not millions, Grace, billions, hidden in Switzerland, Singapore, and a dozen other locations." Derek dropped his water bottle. Lauren's phone clattered to the ground. Patricia and Robert stared from their screens like figures in a Renaissance painting, frozen in the moment of revelation. "I could have left any time," Eleanor said quietly. "Bought my own estate, lived in luxury, abandoned you all to your schemes. But I stayed. Do you want to know why?" The question hung in the air like an accusation and an absolution combined. "Because I loved my son Thomas despite his weakness. Because I hoped grandchildren might break the cycle. Because leaving felt like admitting defeat. So I stayed and watched and waited for one soul to show genuine love without calculation." Her gaze seemed to find each viewer individually. "Marion visited me before knowing about any inheritance. She sacrificed career and comfort to hold my hand through chemo. While you schemed to steal thousands, she quietly built innovations worth billions inspired by my care needs. The Singapore accounts you discovered, Robert, were decoys, breadcrumbs to reveal your greed. The real fortune remained untouched, waiting for someone worthy. Marion didn't just inherit money, she inherited possibility. Eleanor stood in the video, moving to a window overlooking the garden where we now sat. But here's my final revelation. Margaret isn't dead. She's been watching all along, helping Charlotte mentor Marion, ensuring my legacy found proper hands. Before anyone could process this, the garden door opened. An elderly woman entered, her resemblance to Eleanor so striking that Grace gasped. Margaret moved with the authority of someone who'd commanded boardrooms for decades, her presence filling the space. "Hello, family," Margaret said, her voice carrying Eleanor's cadence with steel underneath. "My sister asked me to wait until now to appear, to see if any of you would choose redemption when offered." She surveyed each family member like a general reviewing troops. "Thomas, you're trying late, but genuine. Derek, your warehouse supervisor, says you're learning humility. Lauren, your first social media post about accountability helped 17 victims find resources. There's hope. But you," she turned to Grace, "you remind me why I stayed away. The same poisonous entitlement that destroyed my parents' marriage lives in you. Eleanor forgave you. I'm less generous." Margaret produced legal documents. "I'm doubling the foundation's endowment, but with conditions. Each of you must complete your rehabilitation programs. Any failure, any return to old patterns, and I'll release what Eleanor didn't." "More secrets?" Grace asked weakly. "Video evidence of your murder planning sessions," Margaret said calmly. "Audio of Derek teaching his children to steal. Lauren's deleted posts mocking Eleanor's illness. Patricia's attempts to poison Eleanor slowly with incorrect medications. Oh yes, we have it all." The family sat in stunned silence as Margaret continued. "Eleanor believed in redemption through love. I believe in redemption through consequences. Choose wisely." She moved to stand beside me, her hand on my shoulder, carrying unexpected warmth. "Marion represents what this family could have been. Brilliant, compassionate, innovative. She took pain and built purpose. You took privilege and built prisons. The foundation's work will continue regardless. I spoke for the first time since the video started. But you have a choice: be part of healing or remain examples of harm." Derek found his voice first. "The warehouse job. It's hard. But yesterday, a single mother thanked me for ensuring her elder care supplies arrived. First time anyone's thanked me for honest work." "I helped a real charity yesterday," Patricia added from her screen. "Actual children receiving actual help. It felt different." Lauren nodded slowly. "My intern supervisor, Aisha, she's teaching me about impact over image. Followers don't matter if you're not saying anything worth following." Even Grace seemed affected. "The elderly residents I'm assigned to, one reminds me of Eleanor. Same dignity despite circumstances. I'm beginning to understand." Margaret studied them with Eleanor's eyes, but her own judgment. "Perhaps there's hope. Eleanor always saw more in people than I did. Continue your work. Prove her right." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Oh, and Marion Phase 5 begins tomorrow. Eleanor had one more innovation to share, but that's just for you." After Margaret left, we sat in contemplative silence. The family that had gathered for my humiliation now faced their own truth generations of greed, confronted by consequences and possibility combined. Thomas spoke first. "She's right. About all of it. We became what we claimed to hate: users, takers, emotional terrorists. But maybe we can still choose differently." "The work helps," Derek admitted. "When my back aches from honest labor, I remember Eleanor's pain from cancer. Perspective. One by one, they committed to continuing their rehabilitation. Not from fear of Margaret's evidence, but from glimpses of who they could become. Eleanor's greatest gamble, that love could transform even the most corrupted hearts, showed signs of paying off. As the gathering dispersed, each returning to their new lives, I remained in the garden Eleanor had loved. Her flowers bloomed despite the November chill, testament to careful tending and deep roots. Margaret reappeared beside me. "You did well. Eleanor would be ecstatic." "Will you stay?" I asked. "Help run the foundation." "For a while," she agreed. "Long enough to ensure the family transformation holds. Eleanor saved me once from bitterness. Perhaps I can honor that by helping save them from themselves." The sun set over Denver. As aunt and niece stood together planning futures Eleanor had dreamed but not lived to see. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight we honored a woman whose final message wasn't about money or revenge, but possibility for healing, growth, and love that transcends greed. The revelation complete, the real work could begin.